Hello and welcome to the Vinny Brusco Show podcast, episode number 416. This week's episode, I'm joined by Matthew Vincent. Matthew is a two-time Highland Games world champion. He is also the founder and CEO of Hate Brand Clothing. He is also the host of the So podcast. He is the CEO and founder of Habit Coffee, and he's actually in the process of opening up Dope Gym. I feel like Matt's a guy that I would hang out with back in high school or college. One thing I like about Matt through his Instagram, through his journey, is he shows up really authentically. He's a very genuine, authentic guy, and he shows up as Matthew Vincent. No frills, no fluff. He talks about his experiences with, TRT or testosterone or cannabis or CBD, his 9+ surgeries that he's had, and the battle with that, the struggle with that. I was stoked to get a chance to talk to Matt. I really hope you enjoyed the conversation. Episode number 416 with Matthew Vincent.
What's up? I'm Matt Vincent. You're listening to the Vinny Brusco Show. Thank you guys for listening. You can find me at I Hate Matt Vincent and spread hate, always party.
And here we go.
There you are, sir. What's up, buddy?
What's up, man? You got sound and everything from me?
You sound great.
Excellent.
You look great. You sound great. How do you feel?
I can't complain, man. Trying to keep everything rocking and rolling right now. So just starting some actual training block, I guess, for the next 15 weeks with a bit of a goal in mind. And so that'll be a welcome change.
Right? You need to give your brain some novelty every once in a while.
Well, for the last couple of years, it's just been such rehab bullshit that there's not been a direction.
Yeah, so you set an actual finite goal in mind with a line of demarcation of like, I want to be here at this thing at this time.
Yeah, but slightly looser, I suppose. I guess. So I'm doing an 18-mile or 30K trail run in Bryce Canyon in May. I'm not a runner. This is gonna have 4,000 foot of elevation gain. It's gonna be a serious day. And so I've got to figure out a smart way to train for it. Because I can't. My knee and hip won't be able to take the pounding of training for it if I just try to run it. So I'm going to have to do a bunch of the cardio on the bike. So essentially, my plan is to be ready to spend 8 hours above 150 beats a minute.
Wow.
That's my training goal.
And what are you doing to monitor that now?
I'll be following that as far as through training. I'll be, keeping track of heart rate, and then training wise, I'll do some linear progression with some deloads, but it'll be essentially accumulation of time. So this week, I've got 5 1-hour cardio sessions that I need to spend at the pace. And so that pace really for me is if it's on the treadmill, I got to be moving faster than 3 miles an hour. That's it.
Right.
It's not
nothing crazy.
Nothing crazy. I just got to be able to do it a really long time.
Yeah.
And 8 hours isn't crazy, but
it's
there's
long
going to be
enough.
a lot. It's long enough. It's long enough. Some of the weeks toward the end of that training, you're going to have, 18 or 20 hours worth of cardio that week. And man, that's going to be a way bigger mental hurdle than I've ever done. Because everything I've ever done competitive wise has been up and over in 2 seconds.
Right.
Whether it's a big lift or it's a throw, I never ever have had a thing that while during the thing, I have to convince myself to keep doing it.
Yeah. I had that.
Whereas this will be.
I had that at an open workout. I did CrossFit for a little while, not on any type of high level competitive like yourself, but just in my local box. And I think it was 15.3, maybe. It was a thrusters and rower combination workout. And I was in the middle of the thrusters and I remember just blacking out. I couldn't see.
Oh, no.
I couldn't see anything, but I was still moving. So I couldn't see anything. And I just heard everything and I got through the workout, but it was wow, like I thought I hit my wall in like workouts, and then all of a sudden you discover another level of yourself when you like all of a sudden I literally didn't see anything. All I did was hear, and it was just muffled noise, and I was still doing the thrusters. And then I finished the workout. And I just literally fell on the floor. My wife had to drive me home and got in the bathtub and had a banana and a
It's crazy, right? Like what the body will do. Like looking at endurance stuff, since now that's kind of what's piqued interest, and guys like Lachlan Morton, the cyclist, or this girl Courtney Dowater. Man, she did the 240-mile run at Moab, and she won by 11 hours. Like she finished and then went to shower, had a full night's sleep, and then came back while the other person finished. Like, man, there's something mentally that those people have that I'm interested in, that I think would be a very, very valuable tool to add to my toolbox. But I got it on, the only way to develop it is forging it in the thing, right? And so I don't need a 100-mile or 240-mile race tools.
right.
But I could use like whatever the beginner gains to endurance training is. I'd like to have those tools of like being able to tell myself like, we're fine, keep moving.
Yeah, that's a hard, and even just beginning that also there takes that mental capacity to step into that space and get past like the narrator in your own mind, right? Like sometimes for me, that's the alarm clock in the morning, right? Just be like, okay, like you just have to move your legs. It's like in Kill Bill,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Move
It's a
move your
move your
toe.
fucking toe. Right. It's 100%, right? Like there's so many things that I guess are very, very easy to look at as impossible. Um, you know, or even your minor stuff throughout the day. But the truth is, it's a series of steps. Just figure out the next one and do that. And then be stoked you did it and let that momentum build into the next thing.
Yeah, it's having an inertia build up and then riding that wave for as long as you can. I just had Vinny Shorman on the podcast a few back, and we were talking about that micro habit, right? That micro habit that you integrate into your life, along with the mindset of a high level elite athlete, which is there is no other option. That's
Right.
what gets people through.
That's that. Yeah. It's just always going to be something that's got to be worked on. Like that muscle's got to get flexed too. Like, I guess I feel like that mental capacity is a thing that you can, I mean, of course you can build it,
Sure.
right? It's just going to take the time and reps, the same as getting strong does. And so I just want to apply the lessons that I've learned now from the 10 years of Highland Games into, like, how do I boil those down into things that apply to everything?
Now, I think one thing that attracts a lot of people to you, other than obviously your professional athlete career and your successful podcast and the clothing line, but is your authenticity. You appear, again, I don't know you, other than Instagram,
Sure. Yeah.
but
This is the most we've talked.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm stoked to have you on, but you show up very authentic. And whether that be talking about usage of cannabis or TRT or your athletic, career or surgeries that you've had, you show up very authentic. What was that transition like? And how did you kind of arrive to this version of Matthew Vincent?
Well, I don't ever remember there being a point where I wasn't open about stuff. Again, I didn't start talking about testosterone or TRT or any of that stuff until, well, I've been using, and I've been open about the fact that I've been on TRT or tests since I got out of the Highland Games and started having knee surgery. I didn't talk about it beforehand because the Highland Games is drug tested, and I didn't use anything.
Right.
And so there's not much to talk about.
Right.
I don't have a moral issue with it. Clearly, I don't really have a moral issue to anything. There's positive or negative consequences, right? And I guess for me, I think so much of what's been brought up in this world has been deemed as good or bad or fucking magic or whatever it is. And so, like, I want to demystify that. Like, I'll tell you the honest truth. Here's what taking this drug does. Here's what this chemical provided me, a benefit or not a benefit. And I guess the more exposure that I got to things like testosterone or cannabis or psychedelics or anything like that, as I was really, really in a bad place looking for help, and I found some in the avenues of shit that we got told forever that these are bad for me and illegal. This is the downfall of my life. And so what came from that was, so we've just been lied to for fucking ever. Is that now what I have to realize? And if that's true, then I need to look at everything as full of shit. And if everything's full of shit, then I want to know firsthand. And so if I know firsthand, then I can share that information. And if I'm not sharing it, then what's the point of getting that knowledge? Because I'm not helping anyone else but myself then. Like, I'm willing to guinea pig. I'm interested to be whatever the best version of me I can create, and whatever gets me there, I don't care.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, is stepping into the best version of yourself, what that looks like, what that feels like. And then again, going back to that inertia and that momentum and finding those steps, those things that lead you to that best version. What was that rock bottom shift, and what kind of, was it a eureka moment, or was it just slowly things that you just started implementing and kind of testing on yourself?
So there's been a couple eureka moments, I guess, this crescendo, I guess. The first one being the real eye opener for me was my father passing away whenever in 2014, died of pancreatic cancer, and watching that process, like that 11 months of him going from being a normal person to dead, was a really eye opening thing to me of like, oh, this can be over. And then, to couple with that already this feeling of like, okay, 2014, like time's ticking, right? So do the things you're interested in doing, because you got X number of days left to accomplish all the coolest shit that you want to do in your life. Has to happen between now and that date that you don't know when it's coming. So get busy. And so that was a big awakening for me. And so what I ended up leaning into was more of the throwing and going to compete and trying to figure that out. And then I got hurt. And so fuck, that avenue's gone, right? So now what? Well, then I got trapped and I dealt with this chronic pain thing, and really, really had to look for some answers out of there. And psychedelics were a really big help in making that shift. It kind of changed my perspective on a lot of things about what's really important, what's not important, and just honesty with myself in a way that I'm not sure that I ever have been before. And it's been really positive, man, of letting go of a lot of the bullshit and anchors that seem to slow down the progress. So those big turning points for me was the getting in pain and dealing with it and realizing like I'm never going to compete again. And then the death of my father, kind of that awakening of like, guess what? You're going to fucking die. And outside of that, the next big shift was getting through the pain and now being out of pain.
Yeah, both, I guess, mental, physical, spiritual, right? Kind of they all work in conjunction with each other, right?
Dude, I'm telling you, the desperation of trying to find help was, I don't care what brought help. I'm completely an open vessel and happy to submit to like anything that's going to benefit me. With as bad as I feel and as scared as I am, I'll take the help.
Yeah, but you have to look into, and a big part of it, from my own experiences, for me personally, it's like silence, right? For me, it's sensory deprivation, it's meditation. Like those are the modalities I use to kind of get into my own self and go further. But the physical pain being another one. How many surgeries have you had up until this point?
So I don't even count the ACL surgery I had in college. So technically that puts me double digits. So that
you're
gives me
half
10.
human.
Yeah. I've definitely got cyborg parts. So I've had 9. The most recent run of surgeries was 9 knee surgeries, all on my right knee. Finally ending. That was starting the end of 2016, and then the final total knee replacement surgery was April 9th of 2019, I think. Fuck. I think so, yes. That makes more sense. Yeah, because I'm somewhere 2 years from it.
Okay. And that was a full, like, so what does that entail? Full, because my knees are dinged up and probably, I mean, not even close to surgery in my mind, or at least I don't want to open up that thought process.
Yeah,
but
so mine was so bad, dude, that like I couldn't walk up and down stairs anymore. Like I could not step with my right foot forward up a 4-inch curb, and then I'd have to kind of jump over the leg.
Wow.
So I couldn't do like a single leg step up on a 4-inch thing.
Wow. So that was
the pain wasn't like a ow, it hurts. it would just shut off and not work. Like the knee won't work. I can't force it through the thing.
So there was no other option
experience.
at that point. There's no other option at that point.
None that I found, man. I did 4 ACL surgeries that didn't go well, and that's really what brought the knee to shit town, was all the ACL surgeries that didn't work. It's just, you're just chewing away at it every time you go in there. And then we did the Oates procedure trying to get out of pain, which wasn't very successful. And then I did a high tibial osteotomy, which was as successful as possible. They still just suck. So getting out of all that, and now realizing that I can, like, I'm now slowly, it's one thing to like let go of that anchor that was chronic pain and realize I'm out of it. Like, I knew that I was out of the pain that I had been chasing to get rid of as soon as they had me walk in the hospital after total knee replacement. I knew it was gone.
Wow.
Now I have a ton of topical pain, right? Surgical pain. Like, I have tissue damage from surgery.
Right.
But the pain that was inside the end of my femur on the medial side of my knee, that sharp 10 out of 10 pain, is gone.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, so the entails of that final surgery are they remove the bottom of my femur, they cut off the top of my tibia, they cut off the back of my patella, and replace all those with metal.
So yeah, you're half human.
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to make friends with our future robot overlords.
Well, you're in good standings, if anything, right?
Right. Yeah. Look, whatever helps me become cyborg, the better. I'm just waiting on Elon to release this Neuralink thing.
That's it. Get the Neuralink. You got robot legs. You're good, man.
Man, I'm half robot. It's so fun.
I believe it. I want to ask you, so what are you using now? Because obviously you're using the sauna treatment, using CBD. Is that like type of cover you're using now? Mm-hmm. Just a little bit more?
Yeah, just everything, right? Like, so for me, it's everything I could possibly throw at it. So it's pretty consistent massage work. It's my own mobility. It's sauna once a day, usually. I usually first thing in the morning, I do like a soak in the hot water. I would use a hot tub. I just don't currently own one. So I just use the tub, works fine. So I usually start there and kind of just break off whatever stiffness comes with waking up in the morning. And then, yeah, I mean, it's kind of an all hands on deck approach to keeping it. It's doing the light cardio and movement and keep the body in check. It's keeping the nutrition on point. So we're staying a bit more anti-inflammatory, doing a ketogenic carnivore style thing. I'm also using HRT and stuff like that, which should help and aid in recovery. Cannabis, usually for down regulation at night. And then, as well as just turning off the noise, man. I don't drink anymore. I don't find that chemical to be terribly useful for me. And cannabis has been a much more positive one. Look, it's calorie free. It gives me a down regulation. It sparks some creativity, and I never have a hangover.
Win-win.
Yeah, right. I can't see where alcohol brings a benefit over cannabis. CBD has been awesome. That's typically like what I'm smoking right now. And man, all the CBD stuff's cool with the rubs or any of that shit. But the truth is, I still think smoking flower is the only way that it really makes any difference. I mean, some of the rubs are nice, but I mean, give me one that's only CBD so that I know that that's the ingredient in it that matters, because like we've had topical rubs for years that make things feel better.
Right. You can throw some icy hot on anything, we've been doing
that
since,
icy hot
since
feels fucking great.
Yeah. Smells terrible, but it feels fantastic. By the way, it's a great lighter.
Oh man, Lupe?
That's amazing.
The podcast wolf?
There you go. How is the studio coming along? You're all set?
Dude, it's coming. I don't know what all set means. Does all set mean done? Because I don't think that that's a real place. I mean, we're up and running and fully functional. I ordered a big neon sign that was supposed to go here.
There, yeah.
I'm not good at measuring things apparently, and so it doesn't fit. But it's awesome, and so I'm just going to mount it outside of the room, which gives me now more room for podcast treasures. So I'll probably have to do like what you're doing. I think I'm going to end up building some shelves to hold some stuff, to display some other cool stuff. A wall of treasures, if you will.
That's what I
got.
got.
One of the things I want.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want is I want a space helmet.
I got a Boba Fett helmet.
All right. That's pretty sick. Yeah, I want like I want like an Apollo helmet replica, like the one with like the gold visor. Yeah, just more cool shit for the studio. I got an MTV movie award.
That's cool. There you go. A little spaceman action.
Yeah.
There you go.
Apparently somebody on Etsy is making them.
Well, you're the person that finally was the trigger. You're the straw that broke the camel's back with getting the Roadcaster. Because I was on the fence about getting. I was like, I ain't get it. And you're like, dude, it's awesome, and just invest in yourself, right? And get it. And I was like, all right, and I did it.
Dude, I've been really happy with that unit. The only thing is we've now moved it from the table over to where Brant's like producer table is, and so
yeah.
I don't have access to the buttons anymore, which I'm not quite sure how I feel about.
Yeah, mine's sitting right here. I like to have everything within arm's reach, you know?
Yeah, if you're running a solo show, you have to.
You have it across the room with no producer to touch it.
No, I just yell at a cat.
It's it. Mittens,
yeah,
hit
man,
the buttons.
I'm trying to have fun and make it as seamless, professional as possible. At the same time, like, I don't know. I hope people listen.
Yeah, that's listen. What's the old Jesus expression? Where two or more gather, I will be there. So it's just
right on, man.
It's just about showing up and doing it, right? And whatever it is. I remember I was listening to something Humble the Poet had was speaking about his first book, and he said like he sold literally one copy, and then he just kept on going and kept on showing up, and you know
that's the trick.
That is right.
You know, like, and that's what I thought about starting the podcast. Like, I'm really honest about a lot of those type of things, and it's the same lessons that I got from strength training, and it's the same advice I give people. Like, if you want to be strong, it's really easy. We don't have to think too much about programming or any of that shit. It's I need you to bench, squat, deadlift, and overhead press moderately heavy once a week for the next 10 years, and it'll work out. Don't get hurt.
Right.
You know, you don't need to go over 90% and give her hell. Just don't get hurt and be consistent. It's adherence and it's consistency that lead to success. So why would it be any different for my podcast? You know, it's not about like, oh man, we've done 3 episodes and nothing's popped. Well, tell me what 300 episodes looks like.
Yeah.
You know, or if it's going to take me 1,000 episodes to get good at this, I better get to getting.
Right.
Because I got reps to get in to be any good at this. It doesn't just work.
Right. I think that's part of the instant gratification that we always seek, right? Whether it be with Amazon, which I love Amazon, don't get me wrong.
Oh man, they've created fucking sorcery. It's incredible.
You know, or just the diet or the 6-pack or whatever goal you're seeking. We want the result now, but you know, the reality is that what happens once you get there? You know, I like to question myself with that. Like, what happens when you do get there, and now what?
So for that type of a question for me is I'm done lying to myself and pretending that there's any there.
Mm-hmm.
Because the there doesn't exist.
Exactly right.
And so if the there doesn't exist, then the whole thing that matters is process. So I better love that. Because no different than like, holy fuck, man, I'm going to do everything I can to get this 600-pound deadlift. Okay. Well, now 605, like, is that it? What's next? Whereas, why don't we just leave the focus on let's make our deadlift as good as possible, and then that intention will guide instead of having, you know, the expectation of I need this many downloads or I need this. If it's not doing this, like I think having goals is fine, but having intention over expectations seems to make a more enjoyable long-term path.
Yeah, when I had that revelation kind of in the float tank, when I kind of came up with this idea that there's, you know, only staircases and landings. You know, we think that we're going to get to the top floor and we've arrived, and the staircases are narrow and thicker and wider and longer. And once you get to a landing, it's time to get back up the staircase. You know, it's the next staircase. And it's okay to reflect, right? And it's okay to have that landing be the goal. But once you get there, get back it, you know?
Right. And because I agree with that completely, that everything is that series of landings and staircases, right? And so what do I need to improve then? I need to improve my ability to cover more stairs. And then I also need to get rid of anything that's too heavy that I'm trying to drag up the stairs with me. Like, wouldn't it be easier to not have that baggage, to not have that bullshit? And like, that bullshit's a lot of things, right? That bullshit is self-confidence. That bullshit is trying to make my fucking mother happy or whatever people have going on, right? Like, I don't have any issues with that, but like, I'm sure.
Like, well,
I don't know what other
but yeah.
fucking grown men in their 40s complaining about their mom's fucking opinion. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, yeah, like, where do you let go of that baggage? Where do you let go of those things that create drag on your possible route to success? Like, is that the people you're around? Because, studies show that if you have like a delinquent and then add him to a group of successful people, he doesn't typically become successful. The delinquency will transfer to the other people. And so, like, make sure that you keep the fucking people around you are not anchors, that they're not, either they're a fuck yes or a no as well. Do they have your back? Do they want to see your success as much as they want to succeed? Or are there some type of scarcity minded individual that somehow your progress is standing in the way of theirs? If that's the case, they got to go.
Yeah, I mean, innately, we're comfortable beings, right? We want to conserve as much energy as possible. We don't want to, use all our energy. So naturally, we're going to be lazier people, right? It would make sense. You use spurts of energy, and then you're going to kind of, hunt and gather, right? You're going to go out, hunt, get what you need, come back and just feast a little bit. And having those people around you who are going to elevate you, right? How important, it's kind of to your point, you have a successful clothing company, you're building a successful gym, you have a successful podcast. How important is having the similar individuals, like-minded individuals in your tribe? And it's so important.
It's been everything for me. It's been everything for me. And the shift is that I've been really fortunate to be able to be introduced and make friendship with a bunch of incredible mutants. And if there's nothing else, like, it's really easy to look at what these people are doing and get that feeling of it must be nice, right? Like that fucking, oh man, well, if I had this, I that's what they're doing and that's why it's working. I'll never be able to X, Y, or Z. And instead of getting out of your own way with that kind of an anchor and saying, look, all your friends are just proving to you that impossible is possible. And if they can do it, there's no rule that says you can't. So you just have to figure it out. You don't get to follow their path, but man, you can take notes on the big picture stuff of like what works and doesn't work. What works for all the people that I find successful that I'm friends with, they never stopped making things. They pivot here and there as things change, but they never stop.
Yeah. And that's where most people fall by the wayside. Now, you had a pretty conventional sales job, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did outside sales in the oil and gas industry for about a decade. It was a good job. Relatively easy. Maintaining relationships, doing stuff like that. All the stuff that I enjoyed from that job, I still do. I still do with people in the companies I work with. And I think it's been one of the reasons I'm able to be successful at this is because I can look at things as a, how do I help instead of a, how do you help me?
Yeah. How do you
and
provide
that's
a
the
service?
move for sales. Right.
But I come from a sales background of 10 years in the car business, and it's you have to shift your mindset a little bit because, again, depending on your interaction or what you're selling, it's a sell with soul or you sell with sleaze or however you want to frame it. And when you could sell with soul, it makes a much bigger transition and an easier sale, right? It makes it when you show up authentically and you believe in what you're doing, it becomes so much easier. How much of sales have you taken into like your just everyday life?
Well, a lot of it, because the thing that I had realized with it was, I mean, there's even if you're selling whatever it is, very rarely are you the only game in town selling X. I mean, we can make up some reasons why you believe the thing you're selling is superior to the other thing someone else is selling, but truth is there's some opinion. So what people are buying is me. And so I've got to convince them that I'm the best path forward, that I'm the one who's going to answer the phone, that I'm the one who's going to be there when you need help. Like, I can provide that different level of interaction and customer service, as well as relationship with my client that they trust and know I'm not going to hang them out to dry. And so and if shit does hit the fan, I don't make up excuses. I don't point the finger at anyone else. I take responsibility and we fix it. Those type of things go a long way. And that's how we've treated our customer base. That's how we've always handled customer service. And I mean, you got to be a real asshole to us in some customer service emails for me not to just send you stuff, but I get a vibe. I know what you're trying to do when people do it. And so there's ways to handle it. Like I've had people that have sent some nasty emails for no reason to our customer service people, and I'll call them personally. And it's weird how much that changes their tune.
Yeah. When you actually respond and not react,
Yeah, I'm
or
like,
you
how can
actually
I help?
Yeah, exactly. How can I help you?
Like,
Right. Because they
Let me
don't
get
want
this right. You've had a product, you paid for it, you've used it for a considerable amount of time, and now something's wrong with it that you did, and you'd like me to eat that cost.
Right. Yes.
I would
That's what
love
I'm
to
saying.
hear in this arrangement how you feel that works out. I'm willing to listen.
Yeah. Where else is that okay? Like, where else in the world is that okay? And it's
Right.
not, and they know it's not. And the old expression, the scavenger opportunist, right? Just looking for an opportunity. And when you can not take it so personal, I think that's a huge part of it. Not taking it personal. That's one thing from sales that I've taken for sure. You can't take anything
you're
personal.
right. You're right. That's a huge lesson. That lesson's really big. The other one is like, so with your job, do you have to do a bunch of cold calling or any of that?
Yeah, cold calling, tons of
See,
rejection.
I don't give a shit about being hung up on. Being told no doesn't mean shit to me.
Well, exactly, rejection. I mean, and so much of anything, even with your own self, growth and your own journey, you have to be okay with failing. You have to be okay with failing.
Yeah. You have to be willing to fail. And like the sales job is such a numbers game anyway that I always looked at it that like, okay, so 1 out of 10 phone calls I make is going to bring me a meeting. Well, then know that that's the game. And so I got to make 10 phone calls to get a meeting. I need to make 100 phone calls to get 10 meetings. Start making phone calls.
Right.
Do the reps. Now you may be able to increase that number because you build relationships and it becomes easier to get meetings. But if you're starting out, start ringing people, man. I've definitely been in full days of like that mode where I'm just dialing my list of numbers I've got that day of customers I want to reach to try to set up a meeting with. And then finally someone accidentally answers. I have no clue who I've tried to fucking call. And so you just try to like use vagaries. I'm like, hey, it's Matt from whatever it was at the time. And I was just seeing what you guys had going on, and I was going to be in the area next week. Now, I don't even know where the fuck I'm talking to at this point. And so I've definitely had, they're like, yeah, it sounds good. We could meet Wednesday. And I'm like, where was that?
Right.
Fuck, I didn't want to go to Florida. And like,
yeah, I'm going to Florida.
Yeah, here we go. That's the job.
Going down that, it's again, I think that's something that humbles you in a sales world. And I think being humbled is another important lesson in your journey, whether it be, mine came from, again, sensory deprivation, having those open and honest, quiet conversations by myself. But then also for jiu-jitsu has been another one where like, you step on the mat and doesn't matter, ego gets very quickly checked at the door, and if it doesn't carry well on a mat.
No, there's someone else in there that's a monster. I loved the little bit that I got to play with jiu-jitsu. I got to probably do it like once or twice a week for about 6 months between some surgeries. I was hoping that would be a good course for rehab. And then the knee just wasn't getting better. It didn't have to do with the jiu-jitsu. I'd like to get back to it, but my hip and knee are so immobile that essentially if I want to do it, I'm going to have to hire someone to come do private rolling, that isn't going to hurt me.
Right.
Or at least stack the cards in my favor to not use it, right? Like there's always a risk. But, definitely doing more of, working and drilling to learn some of the sport and not full speed rolling with someone who maybe needs to prove a thing.
Yeah.
I can't risk that.
Right.
Like, dude, I'm sorry that you're such a weak, fragile boy. But thanks for now. I need 6 months of recovery.
Yeah, that's a dangerous place to be because you are trusting someone with your body, right? You're trusting them that they're going to be composed and have a certain attention to the surrounding air, what's going on. And if they're in this, I remember one time I was rolling when I was a white belt and I was rolling with this kid and like, we slap hands and we get ready to go. He's like, he said some cheesy like 80s line. Like he
Yeah,
might as well have said like it's
God.
go time. Like it
Oh,
was
perfect.
something like that. And I was like, oh boy. And then literally next class he wasn't there. He never showed up again because he couldn't take that he wasn't the best at the thing.
It's amazing to me that people think they're going to walk in and be that. Like, how coddled have you been? Like, how much have you been patted on your cute little fucking head and told that everything's going to work out and you're great and beautiful and you deserve success? Like, you don't deserve shit. You only deserve what you get. So get to fucking getting. Like, you want to get good at jiu-jitsu? Congratulations. You got 10 years ahead of you.
At least.
At least, right? Like, I think realistically, like if you get 2 belts up from white, you're pretty proficient. You're probably decent enough at jiu-jitsu that if there was ever a physical altercation, you have the upper hand 99% of the time. And then so just get in there to learn, man. I just don't understand that, again, that roadblock of a mindset that limits that person's ability to grow. Well, I'm not great at this. Fuck that. And so then what do you do? Like eventually figure out that you're not great at anything because you haven't put in any time and reps. So why bother?
I think a big part of that is people not finding themselves and not finding their passions, right? They're just kind of, it's okay to like play and have hobbies and test out different things. And, and that's a way of discovering yourself, right? But people are so wrapped up in going to work, coming home, paying the bills, wrapped up in that consumer mindset that they don't step into being humble. They don't step into the failure aspect of things, and they don't appreciate the perspective that failure can give you. So once you can learn to appreciate that, you're more willing to fail at things.
And it's tough too. Like there are a lot of, look, I'm really fortunate that the life I have, the life I've created provides a lot of free time, and it provides a lot of opportunity for me to pursue interest and passions. I mean, with that said, none of this is a fucking accident. This is what I've wanted to create. It's just a long process to get here, like it is anything. But there are people out there, man, that have other responsibilities that I don't have, like kids, or a job that's too good for them to get away from, or they don't have a second outlet, or they don't have some of the tools that I had to build my own thing, right? Like entrepreneurship's not for everyone. And I totally get that. There's nothing wrong with having the 9 to 5 and having a job, as long as you're not unhappy and not doing anything about it. Like if you have the 9 to 5 job and you grind it out and do that thing and it's a thing you don't love, but the rest of your life you're really into and it provides you opportunity, I got your back. That makes sense to me. But if you're unhappy, there's not an excuse.
Yeah, we're not taught that in school, though. We're not taught any of this, mindset approach, any of this mindful. I mean, that's something as a parent, I find I'm very proud of, as I teach my daughter how to be mindful. She's 6, but I literally freeze her and I'll say, okay, let's take a deep breath. Let's analyze this. Maybe it's too much for a 6-year-old, but for me, I want her to grow up with the skill set and not be wrapped up in the culture, right? Not be wrapped up in what she should be or what she should be doing, or how, I want her to be her own person. And again, to the point of, I think where people get tripped up is they just get on the treadmill and then they don't even know where they're going. And I've had clients say it to me where you look across me and say, I lost myself. I lost my soul. And I don't even know who or what I am anymore. And it's that realization, the awareness. But now what do you do with that awareness? That's it's like, what do you do with the awareness? Now it's the hard part. It's the accountability and the discipline that's going to lead you to the Aristotle quote, discipline is freedom, right? Discipline equals freedom.
Yep.
Jocko Willink. That's it's stepping into that space. And now what? Now what do you do with this information?
Yeah, that's a whole nother ballgame. Like recently I've been trying to explain this idea that like if life is this really long maze that you're trying to get from point A to point B, which is the other end of the map, as you're working your way through and you get down a corridor, you may get 20 years into the maze or 30 years into the maze or 40 years into the maze and realize this is as far as this path goes, whether that's a job that has a ceiling, or you realize like, okay, so because I chose this, now I'm limited. And at that point, you've got to make a decision like, either we're going to ride it out here for the rest of our lives because we're happy, or if you're not, sometimes you got to retreat backwards to get on another path forward. And like that retreat's tough for a lot of people because there's a big ego check to making less money, providing less, because you're rolling the dice on a better more next time. Like, I know that I can always get a 5 doing what I'm currently doing, but maybe I need to live through a few years of a 2 or a 3 to have the opportunity to hit 10s.
Yeah, stepping
if
up.
if that makes any sense for
Yeah. Well,
fucking metaphor town.
It's going through. It's like you said, it's going backwards to go forwards, right? It's taking the steps backwards and realizing
a lot of time
you need to step out of comfort, right? You got to step out of the comfort and out of the convenience of things, because that's where you just get complacent. That's where you don't grow.
Well, for sure as shit. Like, you don't get to go to bed and be like, oh, I'm miserable and I don't like the way this is going, and then wake up the next day and just repeat the same actions and hoping it changes and yields a different result. Like, it's never going to. So if you want a different result, you got to start giving the system different inputs. You got to try different things. You've got to mix it up, change the job, see what else is going on. Like, maybe realizing you're unhappy, maybe step 1 isn't, burn it all down and quit your job. Maybe realize you're unhappy and say, okay, for the next year, I'm going to buckle things down. I'm going to tighten my budget. I'm going to save as much money as I can so that I know that we can survive this shift to whatever the next thing is. But, depending on how much responsibility you have is how much more dialed you need to be in that approach and how much more accurate an attack you need to try to have. Whereas, luckily enough, I can be a little loose with it, and I can just say, I want to try this. And if it works, cool. And if it doesn't work, that's fine too. But figuring out when to say, okay, that didn't work, how do we pivot? Instead of just riding it into the ground.
Yeah, making the adjustment and the pivot. Yeah, well, making the adjustment to pivot is huge, right? It's being able to recognize, like you said, recognize the corridor you've gone down and be like, okay, all right, this is where it is. All right, now what do I do? And I think experience obviously is being the biggest factor in that, and taking that experience, taking those, for me, it's a feeling, right? If I could recreate a feeling, that I know, I could be aware of it, and then I can manipulate and move and adjust accordingly. And for me, again, the only way to achieve that was through getting silent, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to analyze my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions when they're coming up, when I'm like, okay, well, here's this thing that was just like that thing. Well, I responded poorly that way last time. How do I respond this time? You have the ability to choose.
You always do, right? Like, you can unwire those patterns of whatever it is. That's something that I have found a lot of help with from the use of psychedelics, is being able to rewire those kind of neurological patterns of being able to get out of my own way a bit, and to be able to be a little bit more open with myself to try new things and not be risk adverse.
What are some of the psychedelics you've tried?
I don't know that not everyone, I guess, would classify MDMA as a psychedelic, but I'm going to. It's definitely an altered state of consciousness. So MDMA, LSD, mushrooms, DMT, and ayahuasca.
And obviously ayahuasca, the big elephant in the room in that list, right?
Yeah, it is. Was a really, really impactful trip. Like, definitely made some really big internal shifts, and definitely some big realizations that some psychological stuff I worked through that, it's like it's really changed. It's not like I had a thought and with a therapist, right? And anytime I've worked in one-on-one with someone like that, we can determine where my issue is, but then like the adjustment to that issue is almost like I have to learn how to do it phonetically. Like, it's not something that I really believe that's set in stone, that like the habit changes. It's like, I know this is better, so I have to do this. And it's like, I'll go through yoga, but I don't really care about it. That would be like the way of, I guess, explaining it. Whereas psychedelics seem to give you some different tools in my experience to like be able to set that intention differently to where it feels part of what your compass is set on, and not just trying to change a symptom or change a side effect, right? That like, oh, you know, the kind of the approach of like, yo, I'm really upset about X, Y, and Z, and then, you know, well, like, have we tried exercise? Have we tried all of these type of things? And like, yo, I want to get rid of the roots. I don't want to do a thing to fight the chemical reaction that's happening. Like, how do I get rid of the mechanism that's making me sad?
Right. Right. The key
And
word there, I think, is root, right? Like it becomes a part of your essence of who you are, not just
have
a
you
part, you know.
experienced done any experience with it, or
No ayahuasca. No
oh,
ayahuasca.
so what about anything else?
Psilocybin and
Okay,
cannabis are the only two.
perfect.
And again, very humbling. And what they do is they
Yep.
shatter your reality, right? They shatter what you know and what you've experienced, and it puts you on a different plane. And again, it gives you the awareness of like, oh, okay, what I perceived as this thing is very different, or it potentially can be in this version of reality.
It seems to just remove a bunch of the walls of, you know, constraints of how I was able to look at things, right? Like, you know, I guess the metaphor for that would be, you know, if the thing you're trying to look at is in the middle of a room, there's only so many ways you can look at it because you're constrained by walls.
Right.
Well, this gets rid of the walls.
Right.
So now I can look at it from 10,000 feet.
Right.
And it seems to minimalize a lot of stuff. It seems to have been giving me a lot of an ability as someone who's really ADHD and needed medication for type of stuff like that, which I just refuse to take. It seems to fix a lot of that for me. Like, focus is through the roof. Yeah, and I mean, like, I've dabbled as well as, you know, big doses and stuff like that for more work, and then like microdosing I've done quite a bit of now, and that one has been a real game changer.
The microdosing.
Oh yeah, microdosing psilocybin a little bit every day for the last 5 months.
Yeah, I had Ian McCall on the podcast a while back, and he was talking about that and how obviously he's kind of leading that forefront of the legalization of psilocybin in California and the implementation of psilocybin and how it's being used now, especially with all the research and all the information that's coming out from medical studies, that the enhancement that it gives you, right? The ability to focus, work as a nootropic, to work on this other level, like an on it pack, right?
Right.
Same
Yeah,
idea.
I fully described like the psilocybin microdosing. Like, I wish that we were fully legal on this. Like, I wish we had it as an option for people. I think it's fucking crazy that we don't. I mean, of the stuff that we allow versus stuff we don't allow, for sure as shit, the law is not made on what is safe for us. That is not the determining factor.
Right.
Because we still don't have a problem with alcohol, and that's far more fucking dangerous than any of these have ever been. But nonetheless, yeah, I think I've described it as like taking a prescription strength alpha brain.
Right.
And so then also, as I take alpha brain with it,
makes sense. It adds on.
Yeah, more gas.
That's all. Nothing wrong with that. You mentioned looking at a table in a room, and I like the idea of that. And for me, the float tank. Have you ever tried sensory deprivation?
Yeah, I have. I just haven't ever been consistent with it. For whatever reason, I haven't. I've liked it every time I've gone, but it's rarely one of those things that I feel called to go do. You know, I'm called to do some of the other modalities I use, whether it's meditation for me. You know, so massage has actually been my best use of meditation. And the way it works for me is because I can get away from my phone and turn my phone off, and I can lay face down on this table for an hour, which I'm too ADD and my anxiety ramps up with inactivity, that it kills me. That, like, if I'm just going to go try to lay in a room, it's way too much of a fight. I'll just start getting anxious that I'm not doing shit.
Don't you think that, and it goes back to our earlier point, don't you think getting through that fight would be so serving? Like, as much as right.
It absolutely is, right? But also at some point, if I can accomplish the same thing another way, maybe I don't need the fight. Like, if I can just find my way of doing it. And so my way of doing it can be he really, like I said, the massage table works really well for me because, it's good music, and then plus something nice is happening to my body. So I'm treating myself, right? Like, it is this self-care moment of like, we're going to let the body kind of get to chill, provide some love for it. And then like mentally, that's when I kind of get more of a mindfulness retreat and I can just wander. The other way that I do that really well is like, so yesterday, I'd finished up what needed to get done of my to-do list. And so I'd kind of even scheduled in some down regulation time. So took a little larger dose of mushrooms, nothing exciting, about 2 grams, and then made my way to the basement with some noise canceling headphones and an eye mask, and laid in the beanbag and listened to music and just let my brain go wherever it wants to go. And figured out a couple cool things yesterday. I figured out kind of a direction I want to make some progress with my team. I figured out a new direction that I want to go with YouTube stuff. I figured out 2 different months worth of design work, and like what direction I want that stuff to go. And so a lot comes from that. It seems the addition of the little bit of psilocybin will allow me to stay a bit more locked in and turn the noise off on the things that I'm not interested in thinking about. Whereas my brain by itself will just get too cloudy.
Yeah, with my meditation practice, it's usually like, again, depending on what time the kids wake up and I'm able to kind of squeeze it in the morning, it will take a lot longer to get to those points, right? There will be a lot of noise. The monkey mind will just keep on going. And I'm like, okay, I recognize that. Okay, now we gotta quiet that down and raise this up a little bit. And and again, for me, that fight is kind of like that battle, right? It's just like, all right, like how do I learn to master that monkey mind, and how can I implement it in everyday activity?
And my use of microdosing and stuff like that has definitely improved my ability to master it without those tools. It hasn't made it worse. It's definitely improved across the board, whether or not I'm using, anything. It seems that it's got my experience with like DMT versus other drugs too. Like DMT is a really fun psychedelic. I haven't found anything terribly valuable to mine from it yet, but it's interesting in a way of like, oh, there's another reality. I'm very confident in saying that there's something else fucking going on with entities in it that I don't have an explanation for, other than there is energy there. And I remember just feeling very welcome and surrounded by love. And if that's what that existence is, cool. I'm happy to have a doorway to that occasionally.
Right.
That doesn't seem like a bummer. I'll take a vacation to an infinite amount of love occasionally. Yeah, that's fine for me. Even if there's nothing more to it than that.
Right.
But it seems that psilocybin provides me with some tools of being able to bring stuff back out from wherever it was and actually make that application.
And are you like journal logging any of this stuff, or are you kind of just...
Oh yeah, I write a shit ton. My phone's a disaster as far as the notes section, and I'm not terribly organized, but I will get a lot of information out. And so yeah, I'll end up like last night. I mean, I guess I'd taken stuff really early on in the day. I guess probably like 3 p.m. or so, when I'd kind of gotten everything done, and then I was up until, I don't know, midnight-ish, but like things, my brain really cracked open with ideas and thoughts of how to drive a bunch of stuff forward at about 10 p.m. And so, man, let it go. Like that's one of the other freedoms I've got of not having to hold such a tight schedule, is that I can take mushrooms at 2:00 on a Tuesday if I feel called to it, because I don't have anything else that needs me.
Right.
That like, if I want to go hang out in the basement for 6 hours, it's really not anyone else's business.
God bless you. I can't take a shit for 6 minutes. Forget about 6 hours.
Sure. These are lives we've both created. I know it's a tricky bit, but forever for me, I saw that with the kid thing and knew that was not a path forward for me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, they definitely, and my children have that similar service in their own way, right? Like the ability for me, I kind of talk about this a lot on the podcast, but for me, it's like being able to revisit childhood, right?
Sure.
Now, they will crack open versions of reality that I forgot about. And that's a beauty that they provide. That's like, oh, wow. Like they're their own psychedelic. Children are a psychedelic for sure.
Oh, no doubt about it. And again, like I'm not really like an adrenaline guy or that type of shit. Like I'm a life experience person. Like I want to experience as many different rad things firsthand as I possibly can. And so, in the pursuit of experiencing the really rad things I'm interested in, whether it's adventures or places or people or any number of things, not having kids made me reach those easier.
Sure.
Now, I do understand that there is a huge part of the human condition I'm missing out on by not being a parent. Like that's a really unique thing that I'm passing on, and I know that. Like that, man, there's a cost, and I'm going to miss out on something that's really incredible.
Yeah.
But man, I don't care for kids, and nor do I want to hang out with any. I've never in my entire life felt like, being a dad would be cool. Like I've never looked at my friends with their kids, and even if their kids are awesome, like Kelly Starrett and his kids are so awesome, and I love being around the whole family. But I've never thought like, wow, that's better than what I'm currently doing.
Yeah. Listen, it's a different existence, right? It's a different reality, and you have to do what fits and suits you and what feels right. Like that's the one thing that I will say that I am great at. Like I will not say I'm great at anything else, but I will say I'm a great dad, and I own that, and I live in that existence in that reality, and I'm proud to be a father. I love being a dad. It's my favorite thing.
Yeah, and I'm super stoked people like you exist.
Right.
Because like, we need it.
Yeah, I'm stoked people like you exist, right? Yeah. Like it's the yin and the yang, right? There's a balance of energy. You need the Matthew Vincents and you need the Vincent, the Vincent Bruscos in order to have that balance, right? And see both versions of reality and see how they're both serving in towards the same thing, right? They're both
and
serving.
They're not in competition with each other.
Right. One's not better than the other.
Well, no, and I don't know where exactly I fall like on the ideas of kind of the infinite timeline and multiverse and all those types of things.
Well, I was going to ask you that next, actually.
But I find it perfect. I find it very fun. I like the thought experiment of it, if nothing else. And, just kind of mining philosophy from it or ideas from it. If all things exist, because all variations in the infinite of Matt Vincent exist, that means there is some version of me that's a junkie on the street, real fucking loser, not doing anything. The guy who's just said fuck it his entire life and been a victim. And then there's whatever the highest version of me is somewhere else. So if both of those exist, why don't I just be the one that's awesome? Because if it's already out there, I may as well just try to be that guy. And so that's how I've always looked at it.
Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement with you. And I again, I'm the kind of the same way where it's worth thinking about. It's fun. It's a fun thought process, right? Like, let's go down that rabbit hole.
I'm into it.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that, so how do I think I'm like getting tied up in my own thoughts now. Now we're there. So do you think that the ultimate version of you is an existence where it's a feeling and not an actual embodiment?
I don't know, and nor do I think it's important. I guess if that helps.
I don't think any of us know, but like it's a feeling of accomplishment. It's a feeling of, like again, it goes back to like an inertia. Like if you think of like Dr. Joe Dispenza, right? He talks about like, the future version of you and it kind of.
Right. And what are you inspired by, right?
Right. And stepping into like a feeling rather than an actual tangible person.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. And I think that goes along with what I'm saying about like whether it does exist tangibly somewhere else or not. The important part that comes from kind of the thought experiment of the infinite and the different timelines and higher version of yourself and all that is, it means it's possible. And if it exists somewhere, it makes it possible. And therefore, it means it's not impossible, which means you can do it. And it's just a series of steps and a code and a recipe for you to kind of decipher to figure out how to get there. And as long as my intention is trying to get to that, anywhere I fall short on the path toward that, I don't is still awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. How much of that is trimming the fat of poor quality things in your life, whether it be people or whether it be habits or whether it be workout routines, and how much of that is adjustment and pivoting and like just kind of cleaning things up?
I think it kind of always constantly has to be. Like, I think everything should always be on the table and up for a debate of whether or not it's currently important. And, you know, just because something doesn't serve you now doesn't mean that it wasn't valuable before or that it may be valuable again. You know, that's about expanding your toolbox. But yeah, trimming the fat big time, man, because the only scarce commodity that we have is time. And so anywhere that I can trim the fat, whether that's, you know, me building dope, right? Like one of the ways of me trimming fat for me to want to train, for, like, done lying to myself, I know that I won't, right? So I know that I won't fucking override.
Don't give myself the bullshit.
No, so I know that I won't override a certain level of inconvenience. That I'll just say, that's not worth it. I won't fucking do it. One of those being where all my equipment has been for the last 2 years, or since I got to St. Louis, has been at a gym 9 for 9 in Lebanon, Illinois. The guys are awesome. The gym's great. It's a 33-minute drive. I don't have 66 minutes to give you for commuting to and from the gym that I can't work while I'm driving. I can't do anything else efficiently for that hour. And that hour is too expensive for me to want to train when I want to train. So finding a place and building out dope that's 2 minutes from my house removes a hurdle. It's the same reason that I built a garage gym. It's because I removed a hurdle. I removed the things that were in my path of like what keeps me from going to the gym, inconvenience. That packing up my car at the end of the day to fucking go. And so for me, it's always been, hey, I'm in the mood to train. I can go train right now. And I want to be training in less than 10 minutes. Like, I need to be able to move at that speed for me to stay efficient. And so that's where I start trimming the fat. I trim the fat that way. I trim the fat with, you know, friends and conversations. I trim the fat with work. I trim the fat with, you know, even with hate of trying to figure out, you know, even recently, right? Like, where are we wasting time? And one of the things we're wasting time on every time that we do photo shoots, because we drop so much stuff, is we're editing way too many photos for what's actually being used. So how do we decide we only need 30 photos? Let's not edit 300 of them.
It's a bandwidth thing. It's a bandwidth capacity.
That's all it is. And you only have so much. And so even little stuff that like you hold an opinion on that kind of gets the wheels to your emotion throughout the day, or any of those type of things that takes you off course. All of those things are this little 1% and 2% suck of your bandwidth. And so how do I eliminate all that bullshit? Like having a meal prep company for me eliminates a bunch of bullshit and buys me more bandwidth. Right. I don't have to think about what I'm eating for lunch. I'm going to open my fridge, grab a meal, put it in the microwave, and shove it down my face and go back to doing what I was doing. Now, there are meals that I want to enjoy and experience, and that's different. But most of the meals during the day for me, I'm going to treat as fuel. Like, I am trying to throw the best possible fuel source into the machine as possible to keep that fire burning as hot as possible back onto the next thing.
Yeah, it's right. And that's one thing that also I got from jiu-jitsu, CrossFit a little bit, but mainly jiu-jitsu. Like, I wanted to fuel myself better just to show up better, right? I wanted to.
You have to.
You have to. It's like, if you want to show up and perform on any level, whether it be professional or at your local, whatever it is, you need to give yourself the proper fuel to do so. And that's diet across the board, whether it be, you know, mental diet, spiritual diet, physical diet, whatever it is. You need to have those things clicking on all cylinders, or to the best of their ability at the time.
Yeah, if I want to build the podcast into what I want it to be, if I want to build the YouTube channel into what I want it to be, if I want Hate Brand to do whatever I hope for there and keep growing, and, you know, my relationship and all these other things, like, for me to stay on the gas for that many different things, you know, I better be putting good fucking fuel in, because I need to perform at top end for as long as I can all day. but I still know that I need to sleep. And so, like, it's another thing, right? That like I'll start working on. Okay, so I know that I'm only going to be a 5 or 7 hours a night sleep guy for the most part. Just always have been. Done fighting it. Some nights I sleep longer, awesome. But sometimes I wake up at 2 a.m. and I'll just start the day because fuck it, I'm awake. If I want to go to bed at 3 p.m., I can. And so, like those type of things, like improving my sleep with like having a chili pad on the bed, and so that if I am going to get 5 or 7 hours of sleep, I'm damn sure it's going to be good 5 or 7 hours. So taking my melatonin, taking a night pack with magnesium and different support to kind of help the system. Like I'm interested in all those 1% and 2% things because I want to see what happens if I actually dial in everything to the full level.
That's a big takeaway from Atomic Habits by James Clear. I just finished that book, and he talks about just those micro habits that you need to kind of stack on top of each other, right? Because of the convenience. Because if the gym is 3 blocks out of the way, you're less likely to go to it. If meditating has to be done at 2, but yoga has to be done at 5, and they're all not lined up, you're less likely to do all of them. And the adjustment on that, where I kind of go back and forth in my own mind, and maybe it's just, me not committing to the thing, is that some days it's just a checklist. Some days it's not going to be, you're going to get them all done when you set it out to be. Now it's just, you got to scatter and you got to pivot.
Well, I'm also aware that my checklist is never going to be finished. That I'm always just continually adding shit to it and then trying to figure out what's actually the priority on the checklist versus, what's more of a back burner idea. And then, working on that list for a long time, like I only get stuck in the priority and I can't address any of the back burner stuff. And that's where me being able to hire talented people like Brant or a new guy that we've hired, Andy, or the guy who runs our Instagram, Harry, like hiring those people to free me up bandwidth to do the shit that only I need to do, right? Like a perfect example of that is like I've outsourced stuff for a long time with the way I run all my businesses. One of the things I outsource is like video editing of the podcast. Like the guy that I've got on staff, Brant, is a very, very talented videographer and editor. But editing a podcast is not rocket science.
Who are you telling?
Right. So, but it still takes 2 hours.
Yeah.
And so, who can I pay to do that doesn't have the other skills that Brant has? Because Brant's time is more valuable. So why would I waste Brant's time at X dollars an hour doing a thing that I could pay someone to do for half that? But also not kidding myself that, well, I'll just do it. No, I don't want to do it because then it makes me want to do podcast less. What I want to do is talk to people I'm interested in, and magically everything else on the backside of that gets taken care of by my team. And so I can stay focused on doing the part that I can't pay someone else to do. No one else can be me.
Pros hire pros, right?
Trying to hire people that are better at the shit I'm bad at.
Yeah, I had that experience over the summer. We had like an inflatable pool in the backyard. I was like, I could put up an inflatable pool, knowing that I can't put up an inflatable pool. Like, you want to talk philosophy and you want to talk about alternate universes? I'm your guy. You want to hang, you want to install a garbage can? I'm not measure twice, cut once guy. So I put up this pool and I start filling it, and it just instantly just starts going lopsided.
No.
I had to drain the entire pool, and I was like, I'm just going to spend the money and just have the people come and do it. And it was principle and it was ego, and I could do this. When in reality, I knew from the jump, I was like, this is not my wheelhouse. I'm like flattening the backyard. I'm like, this is not me. This is not what I do.
Now, if you want to do it for skill acquisition, I'm into it. Like if you want to say, hey, I'm going to learn how to do this new thing today.
I didn't, and I don't.
That is not what that's not what you were interested in. You want a fucking pool in your backyard.
Right.
If you can afford it, spend the money and have less of a hassle.
Exactly.
You don't have to be a martyr to all these projects.
Honey, I'm putting up the pool, just carrying across the backyard.
God, dude, it would have gone so poorly for me too.
But it was
things I'm good at and not good at. And
right.
Not one either.
And it was realizing that, and I was like, all right, like it was just ego, and it was just me being like, I could do this, I could fucking put up a pool for my family. And
right, like or use of resources, right? Should I have, the money that I spent on construction for dope, should I have learned to do all the woodworking and stuff myself and then spent 8 months building it out while I live in this bleeding of money and not being able to produce content because I can't get the space open?
right.
No, pay someone, move on.
Yeah.
And there's, maybe that's not something that anyone can just do, to pay someone and move on, but there's something in your life that you can spend a few bucks on to eliminate an inconvenience that maybe gives you some bandwidth that you can make more money than you doing that thing.
Yeah, for something as simple as wardrobe, like fat trimming, for me, it sounds silly to a lot of people. Like, and when I did it, people are like reaching out, like, "Hey, is everything okay? Like, talk?" I'm like, "No, I'm good. I'm just getting rid of the sneakers that sit in a box. Yeah, sneakers that sit in a box that have never touched concrete, or a trunk full of T-shirts that I've never worn. I don't need it. What am I doing?
Dude,
it's taking up bandwidth."
Bonnie and I do it the same way, man. We, I would say monthly, if not a few times a quarter, like we gut our closets pretty good. Also, I own an apparel company with a nonstop fucking flood of shirts that show up at my home. It's like, it's first world fucking problems.
Yeah, right. Really. I mean, I'm getting way too many free T-shirts and clothing.
Well, yeah, except for they're mine. I made them.
Right.
So it's not like they're fucking free. They cost me a shitload.
That's a good point.
But nonetheless, like, it's still a thing that happens. Like, there
Right.
is a ton of stuff that shows up because as a company, we produce a lot of new items. And so I get every item and have to photo shoot it. And like, man, they just keep coming.
Right. Well, stop making them and they'll stop.
Work on that.
Rather
on
keep
that,
it,
man.
But it takes up, it's small things like that do take up bandwidth, that do take up space, and it's brain occupancy. And if you can't, and it's like you said, if you're using it for skill acquisition, right? If you're using it to improve neurological pathways and learn new things that you can apply to new parts of your life, then great. But if it's just sucking, time and energy, an energetic vampire, you need to find a way to outsource it.
Yep. Especially if it takes you an hour to do it, right? Figure out what you could do for that hour that maybe makes more money than it costs to pay that person to do the thing.
Yeah.
Like for me is like, Bonnie and I have hired a lady that comes every couple of weeks to clean our house. Sweeps, mops, does all this type of shit that I have no interest in doing. And not only if I do it, I'll do a poor job. So it's worth the $100 for me and another full-grown adult with an income that doesn't have a kid to split, to have the house stay really nice. Right? Like, that's a thing now that we don't ever have to think about, and we feel better because shit's clean.
Yes.
So what a cut on our drag that $100 buys us.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to pay her to clean here.
There you go.
Because I want this place to magically stay perfect.
Right. And that's also an energetic frequency, right? Like when you have a clean house or you have a clean studio or you are like regimented in certain regards, it creates a different energy. Like there's a different vibration to the space when you're in it and it's clean. And you're like, all right, like you said, like you do a closet unload, right? There's just an energetic freedom that comes along with that, where you're just freeing up space and energy. You're like, okay, like, oh, okay.
And using my resources to buy more bandwidth is an investment in me, instead of using my resources to buy some temporary bullshit that's going to put a smile on my face for 30 seconds.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I like things.
You have a beautiful Pan 311.
Yeah. Thank you.
As do I.
I've been a fan of this watch for took me 10 years to actually pull the trigger on it, or not pull the trigger on it. It took me 10 years to afford it.
Right.
To be able to say, like, I can make that decision and it doesn't hurt as much.
Right.
Hurts a little.
It hurts a little bit.
A fucking little bit.
But I'll take it.
Man, that hurt a little bit. Like, that's the reminder. My time is fucking valuable.
Yeah.
This watch took me a long time to commit to earning.
Yeah.
Which is, mine's beat to shit. I wear it every day for everything. So it's scratched and fucking beat up.
It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be. It's
Nothing's
like,
sadder to me than a Ferrari parked on a fucking trailer somewhere.
listen, mine is not beat to shit, but it's supposed to be. Like, it's an Italian army watch. Like, that's exactly what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be beat to shit.
Yeah, I didn't buy this watch as an investment.
It is, though.
I'm not fucking reselling it. Yo, don't buy used shit from me. It's a terrible fucking plan. Everything I own, I treat like a hammer, and like nothing I own owns me. And like, I don't have that sentimental attachment. Like, I love this watch, but if fuck it, I could not wear it. It's fine. I could replace it. It doesn't make me. It does, however, buy me some bit of happiness every day when I get to put it on, and like that's a couple percentage. So is the couple percentage of driving a vehicle I'm really into.
Yeah,
because it's fun to go fucking start my truck every day. Yeah. And no, I don't drive a Ferrari. I have a fucking Toyota Tundra. It's real cool.
It's
cool. It's a really cool Toyota Tundra, but it is a fucking Toyota Tundra, right? And I guess what I'm trying to say is like there's different levels of this that you can buy. Like it doesn't have to be what MTV Cribs taught us was cool. Like there's a lot of little hacks that you can do. Like I said, what a hack it would be to have the meal prep thing for most people. For something like that with like Eat Right Foods for who we work with, dude, it's 10 meals for $75 using the 25% discount code we have for the podcast. And then after that, you get 10 meals for $90. That's cheaper than I'm shopping and cooking. And then especially if I factor in the time it counts for me to prepare.
Yeah, meal prep is a huge one. Proper nourishment. It is. It's a small little hack that you can implement into your life where you could say, okay, this takes away bandwidth. How do I free up the bandwidth? And then you get
immediately makes me more consistent on diet. Yeah, I'm 100% with you, dude. Like that's one of those little things that I think your average person could invest in themselves and free up a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah. It is a luxury, but again, you have to find it where it applies to you. And where, for me, it was clearing out a drawer of bullshit, right? Getting rid of a bunch of sneakers that never got worn. And people are like, well, how is that? Well, it's serving me in the regards that it's occupying space, right? Which is tying up energy. When I open the drawer, instead of feeling like, all right, I could choose this black t-shirt or this gray shirt, done. Problem solved. Then going, well, do I want to wear my my Bruce Lee Kung Fu t-shirt, or do I want to, like, who gives a fuck? It's a t-shirt, right? Like
black t-shirt, yeah,
black t-shirt, done. Gray t-shirt, done. Let's roll. And it seems small, but when you learn to value that energy, that whatever you want to call it, when you learn to value that, it becomes a commodity.
And I think stuff like that cutting thing down to the stuff that serves you, right? Like having the stuff that you need, but not a lot of excess bullshit. I think again, like that's such a life hack. Like that's such a freeing thing that is a bit of universe creation, right? That like, figure out what your style of clothes is and then figure out mastery of 4 things, right? Are you a black t-shirts and jeans type of guy? Because I am. I fucking wear them every day.
Right.
I have 3 pair of pants I wear.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
And they're all from Barbell Apparel. Like they're all like I wear those, or I wear sweatpants I make.
Right.
And so, that dialing your universe in to know, like, if you're going to be a sweatpants guy or a black t-shirt guy, figure out what's the coolest black t-shirt and then get 4 of them and stop buying black t-shirts.
Exactly.
Like that's fucking it, right?
I'm still mining through them. I'm still like, which one? There's so many brands. I'm like, which one do I want? But to your point, just get it, be done with it. It's like once you know what works, like it sounds silly, but like a haircut, right? Once you know what haircut works you, just stick with the fucking haircut.
Yeah. Also, like you're allowed to realize, hey, I want a different haircut now.
Yes,
and then make a shift. You don't have to own this for the rest of your life and be so concrete to say like, no, it's only black shirts. I decided that in 2021, and we're fucking ride or die on that forever. Now you're allowed to fucking change, but I mean, I like that 80-20 rule, right? That applies to most things. That I bet I wear 20% of the clothes I have 80% of the time.
Right.
And so why fucking have like maybe the other 80% of the clothes that I'm not wearing? What if I only kept 10% of that?
Right. Right. And what
that's a huge reduction.
Right. And weapons I served people who don't have as much. Weapons if I gave to people who don't have clothing, right? And recognizing the humanity in others, like we talked about a little bit earlier, where you could be the junkie on the street, or you could be the best version of yourself. It's just this version of reality. You're that one, right? You are who you
Yeah,
are.
dude. Again, yeah, like having that gratitude for as lucky as you've been, and having some empathy for realizing that not everyone's plight was because they made a bunch of bad decisions. There are some people the cards just got stacked and they're against them. And like, drowning people don't mean to fucking pull the other people around them down. They're fucking drowning. They're fighting for their lives. They're doing anything they can to figure it out. And, you know, it's easy to question those people's decisions in that moment when I'm not drowning.
Right.
And so, you know, having some empathy for that, you know, especially with, you know, what you said about going to bring some clothes to the shelters or anything like that. Like the homeless problem in our country is not due to a laziness issue. It's a mental health issue. Like, people that become homeless that aren't having mental health issues are typically out of being homeless in under 90 days. Like, usually faster than that. And so if someone's homeless for a longer period of time, there's a bigger factor at work. And I wish we had better ways of addressing those type of things in our country. I wish that we had a different system that was, I don't know, more open to trying any type of medicine. But, you know, thanks to Rockefeller Foundation for changing up our medical history back in the day and deciding holistic medicine of any way will be illegal.
Right. Which makes
fucking,
that's a whole. Yeah, what you said?
As a business owner, if I could make a legislation that says someone has to own hate brand shirts, this would be great for me.
Right.
I fucking get it.
Everyone must wear hate brand.
Right. Like, what do you mean? I could just make a law and then everyone has to do that and no one can do anything about it? Why would I not do that? Of course you would.
Right.
And that's a bunch of how we've got to where we are on a lot of things, like William Randolph Hearst with cannabis. I mean, it's some fucking dude saw it as a threat and then made up bullshit about it and everyone bought in.
Scavenger opportunists.
Fucking incredible. And look, I'm as impressed by what he pulled off as I'm annoyed by it.
Right. The other side of that stone is just as impressive.
Fuck yeah, man. The level of marketing and commitment that takes to change people's mind on a thing, to a fantasy, to a fairy tale that you created, to just believe in bullshit and lies, is wildly impressive. It's the same reason I don't understand people's frustration with social media. Like the data mining or any of that. Like, they're not collecting data with any emotion attached to it. They don't give a shit. It's just collecting data. And so, like, I had one the other day that I wondered, like, it was a targeted ad, and it was definitely directed at people in St. Louis or the Midwest, health and fitness, and was talking about the temperature outside. And like, it was something cold weather, right? And so I'm like, yo, is there that level that they know that phones from my location are talking about cold stuff? So now they're targeting fucking ads about temperature toward, you know, that also fit into my categories, which the level of integration and information that those algorithms can process is bonkers. And again, it's magic. Like, that's a crazy thing to me, that they're so good at what they're doing. Like I know how addictive social media is. And instead of being like, I can't believe they made this addictive, I wish the people who made the really addictive thing would undo their work. Like, no, that's not happening. Maybe fucking take some responsibility and learn how to walk away. What they did is incredible. And anytime, like, I catch myself just in that endless scroll, I'm like, you sons of bitches.
Got me.
Like, you're fucking so good at this.
Got me.
You've invented a thing that as habit, I will just grab and look at.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I gave up social. I did like a little cleanse at the end of the year. I was like, all right, I'm just going to stay away from my phone. I'm going to be present for the family, blah, blah, blah. And I would get like phantom phone. Like, I'd reach for it out of like habit. I'd be like, oh, I'm like, wait, you're not doing that. Don't do that. And I had to like bring an approach to it and an awareness to it and be like, okay, wait, no, you're not doing that right now. Like, no, like, don't do that. Put it down.
Yeah. I'm sure I check my phone a few hundred times a day,
Yeah.
but also my entire universe operates with that phone.
Right. That's the other part of it. I started
And so
using.
I'm not mad at that thing. That thing's fucking awesome. Social media is awesome. None of this I get to do for a living existed 10 years ago.
That's crazy, right? That's the crazy part about it. I started using using it to my favor. Like, I really like that pair of Nike pants I saw earlier on my thread. And then an hour later, I'm like, oh, there they are. Like, just start saying things you want, and then they'll just appear on your thread.
Oh, amazing. So I just need to start putting more positive rad shit out into the universe.
Right. It's basically
Well,
just a
that's
reflection of
another
you,
one
right?
that blows me away, right? Is when people are like, oh, they're so like if your scroll makes you angry and you find any bit of anxiety or like, social media sucks because of what all the stuff that's on your feed looks like, that's your fault.
Right.
It only shows you more of the shit that you hit like and or interact with or slow your scroll down. Want your social media to be a really nice, positive, beneficial place, delete shit that makes you mad. You don't owe it to someone for them to fucking get access into your life and change your mood. If they do, they're not your friend.
Yeah, having the
It's a really
self-control.
easy thing.
Having the self-control, right? And recognizing that and being like, but comparison's the thief of joy. When you're sitting in that comparison mindset and you're not doing anything for yourself, people who are sitting on their phone getting frustrated, and I'm guilty of it. Don't get me wrong. I will fall into that trap. I will fall into the trap of comparison is the thief of joy. It will deprive me of a thing, right?
Yeah.
Based off of X, Y, and Z. And I have to have the awareness and the discipline and the control over myself to say either A, shut the fuck up and do something about it. B, put down your phone because you're in control of that. C, don't follow the person or the thing that's frustrating you and start to create the things around you that you want.
Right. And I mean, make a decision on that comparison bit, right? Like, I think that's a perspective shift that it's really easy to look at what other people have as a sign of what you don't have instead of looking at the things what people have or what they've accomplished and going, holy shit, anything's possible.
Right.
Now, I think that depends on who you choose to follow. And I would love to say, like, look, if you're following a bunch of like easy, low hanging fruit for that would be like, are you following the Kardashians who haven't
Sure.
done anything other than manage to be famous? But with, the longer I've been in doing and what I'm doing, no one fucking accidentally makes $1 billion.
Right.
So to pretend that they're not calculated and good at what they do is only disservicing you.
Well, it's the same thing as the phone, right? It's the same thing as like you're getting mad at them for doing their thing, right? You're getting mad at the phone for being a phone. You're getting mad at the Kardashians for being a Kardashian and doing the thing that that's what they do, right? That's the channel you've tuned to and you've watched, and you can't get mad at that if you're choosing to watch it. And if you are getting mad and watching it, you're just fueling the machine that they've created.
Yeah, or fill your feed up with people that do stoke your fire. Like, and not only that, like another shift I made over the last probably 6 months is like my friends, like my core group of homies, like, yo, I'm just gonna spread hype. Like, I am fucking stoked that they're on a rocket ship to the raddest place ever. I just want to watch and take notes. Whether that's, Dana and Rob or, Keaton, friends out in Salt Lake City or any of these other super mutants that like, man, I'm just so honored to get to be friends with and watch them do this thing and create, whether that's, Steffi and Hayden down with Hybrid or any of these other freaks, what Kelly Starrett has continued to do long term, what Mark Bell has accomplished in inventing a slingshot that tons of people tell him is a terrible fucking idea. Instead of being able to pivot that to being a media company that sells some stuff, like, it's incredible what those people have pulled off. And all that does for me is it awakens me to the idea that it's possible. You just have to figure out the recipe.
Yeah, and then you have to meet you have to meet all the needs on the way up, right? And you get to the point of self-actualization, right? The top of the triangle. And then what do you do with that self-actualization? Do you go back down to the base and try to have the bigger house, the better steak, the bigger car? Or do you go on the other end of self-actualization and go into a conscientious self-actualization and start to go down that process where you can become competently conscious, right? And be aware of all of your little idiosyncrasies and all of your triggers, and then be able to respond to life rather than react to it. But that takes a lot of going inward where people don't want to, and they don't have the luxury.
And you're right. It's not just that they don't want to, they don't have the luxury, because a lot of people who are drowning don't have time to hit that pause button to get that self-reflection. It's, easy to pick on a buddy, right? Aubrey with on it, love the guy and love what he represents. And like his book, Own the Day, has some real gems in it. But however, like I realized the fallacy of, the perfect day is getting up early, getting out in the sun, stretching, having some salt water with lemon, having a cold shower, wrestling with my partner, ending up with some morning sex, and then starting my day. I'm like, fuck, man, what time did this begin? Like, oh, I didn't have time to catch that in before 9 a.m. You know what I mean? And so I realized the fallacy of like, okay, like I think we're playing with a different reality, right?
Right.
But there is a version of it that you can do.
Exactly.
And it's about finding your best day. That's some tips and tricks that equal maybe what his best day looked like. But yeah, there's an awareness there of like, that's not playing with the same reality as everyone else.
We're playing with a different game. Like we're playing the same game, but we have different rules and different pieces.
Did you watch Arrested Development?
I did, here and there.
Okay. There's a scene of it where they run a banana stand.
Yes, there's always money in the walls of the banana stand.
Ideal. Yeah, so they run the banana stand. Job is trying to get free bananas, as a brother would.
Right.
And Michael has shut him down on free bananas. And the mom, at some point, is like, "You won't even give your brother a free banana, Michael." And like, meanwhile, they're in like a big financial crisis because the feds are after them for doing sketchy business shit. And so Michael's trying to hold it all together and keep money very, very strict and nothing weird, and cut costs anywhere they can. So free bananas to your brother would be a cost that we could probably eliminate. And her answer, Lucille's answer, is, "What does a banana cost, Michael? $10?" And like that to me is like an answer from like an Elon Musk or something like that. Is like,
right.
I mean, what does detergent cost? $200? Like, it's not a big deal. Like,
right. Exactly.
You don't have any fucking idea. And with that idea, like, why do we keep hiring billionaires to run our company, our country? Like, they don't know anything about us.
There's no perspective.
None.
There's no perspective.
Fucking clue. Can you, like, when do you think the last time Donald Trump had an idea of what groceries cost?
Right. Or any of it.
Any clue whatsoever.
And it goes both ways, right? It goes and people get so wrapped up in one political mindset or one political affiliation to something where you have to, and again, it goes to the other point, like you have to turn the stone and look at the other side of the reality. No matter what your political affiliation is, you have to see the right and the wrong in both. And that's where people get so tripped up. And you have to also apply that to your life. And like you said, like you take an Aubrey Marcus, if you go down his feed and you compare your life to his, you're gonna feel like shit. It's gonna
be a bummer, man. His is a real good one. His the universe that man has created is a real fucking fun one to hang out in.
Right, but he has created it, right? He has created it.
That's the point. He fucking made it, and he deserves access to whatever he wants to do with it. He made that out of fucking ether, man.
Right.
To pretend that he didn't is crazy. That guy started off selling fucking fleshlights.
Yeah, I thought it was. I was gonna say fleshlights.
Fleshlight. Like, you think that pivot? Like, you think the guy who comes on as a sales rep for Fleshlight sees himself running $100 million business less than a decade later?
But there's something to extrapolate from that, right? Like you said, maybe you can't play it out as is, but what does your version of a perfect day look like? More importantly, what is your perfect day for me feel like? How do we step into the feeling? What are the things that you're doing? Maybe it is the Himalayan salt with water at room temperature. Maybe it is a cold shower. Those are the things that you could apply to your life, that you don't need to be making X, Y, and Z. You don't need to be Aubrey Marcus or Elon Musk. You could just be you, and you could take what you can learn from them, what you could apply to your everyday and sprinkle it in. And if it starts to make a change, then keep on doing that.
Right. Like, I mean, even if it's like, you can't afford a massage on a regular basis. Well,
Get a foam
can you
roller at
afford, get a
Marshall's.
foam roller, but get a foam roller and have some fucking intention behind when you use it, and don't just blue ball this thing on the floor for 45 minutes. Actually try to address some issues and realize what you're doing, because there is a point of overdoing it too. So make sure you're using it for the effective dose and not just going through the motions. That's another one that people can't quite get right, is that it's this going through the motion and repetition of routine. And for me, that one's scary. It's just that daily routine to me, I find really scary, because when I'm in that, dude, time disappears on me. It just, weeks fly by, and next week is already here, and the next month is already here. Whereas like the times that I can slow down and be on the road for 8 weeks or do something like that, that 8 weeks really slows down, because you're so aware and so perceptive of everything going on, because you're not in routine. So you're not turning down all those auxiliary systems that don't need to pay attention, because you know what the drive between X and Z look like.
Right. Well, being mindful in what you're doing, being mindful and present. And again, it doesn't need to be that you're on this 8-week tour or 8-week trip or traveling. It could just be simple as brushing your teeth or taking a shower. Being present in those moments is where you start to shift, and where you can make the adjustments, and how you can shift your mindset. And then you can start to create from that space. But it's getting wrapped up in the mundane, right? Getting wrapped up in the momentum of a pile of shit streaming downhill. You get caught up in that, rather than stopping and freezing, being like, all right, I got to make some adjustments. I have to pivot. I have to do whatever it is, and start to create.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you just have to be fluid enough. I think. You have to be willing to give it some room to wiggle, because like that death grip direction on the wheel, saying that we're going there, doesn't give it anything. Like, I know that if overall you and I get in a vehicle and north is the goal, and I just set the vehicle at north and only file what the compass on the truck says, we're not going to stay on the road very much. But if I allow it to kind of weave and flow and dodge traffic and get around things, like, that's a much easier passive egress, and allowing it to flow a bit, despite that it's not the direct line.
How do you like rebound personally from when you're kind of feeling that you're off track or off, your compass is out of line? Do you just stick to what you know, or do you kind of try to get creative?
It's a mix. So like, first thing I'll do is usually go to the toolbox where I know what kind of recalibrates that. And usually for me, that would be like a yesterday. That's that couple of hours to be able to sit by myself and enjoy some mushrooms and see what comes up. Let's look a little bit deeper on what's serving me and not serving me currently. Let's take an inventory and see what's valuable. Use what we got, and what needs to go. What are we wasting time on? Yeah. And so like that's how I end up recalibrating a lot. Kind of nightly having, go ahead.
What's your implementation of that afterwards? Is it something that you just, you plan out, calculate, kind of write out, or is it just something like, all right, I'm going to figure it out as I go?
No. I have to be a bit more intentional than that. So like once I find that gold in those moments of recalibration, and like I need to write it down, and then I need to also voice those intentions to the universe, whether that's my team or Bonnie or anyone else, because once it's out there, now it's out there, and now I need to be accountable because I said a thing.
I go back and forth on that sometimes, because, especially when you see the people on social media, and again, using that as just the micro of the macro, but when people kind of step into space like, I'm going to do this thing, a lot of times it comes off, and maybe that's just who it's coming from, it comes off as like grandiose, and it comes off as just very pompous and very like, I'm going to do this next thing. And then you have people like a David Goggins, obviously the extreme version of that, who's like, I'm going to do this thing and watch me fucking do it.
Right. Well, without follow through, both are worthless. And so you got to be someone that's a person of action, that's going to follow through on the shit that you commit to. Otherwise, don't say it out loud. I have no interest in posturing. And so like, I'm not going to waste any time with that. If I've made a decision, I've made that decision. My voicing it with my team and or whatever it is. And like, even if you are someone that voices this thing, this intent that you want to put into the universe, and you fail, like, that's okay.
Absolutely. But I think where
like
we
learn
get tripped
from
up
the
with
failure.
that. Right. But a lot of people take that failure and it becomes like crippling.
Man, there's so much failure is a so much better coach than success.
Goes back to our previous point.
Yeah, of course, right? So like failure's great. And like trying to explain that to people, kind of the idea I use behind it is like watching professional BMXers and skateboarders. What they get really good at is falling and failing. They get so good at falling and failing that they fall and fail without getting hurt so that they can try again. Like, holy shit, how can that guy fall 20 times today on this stale gap? Well, he's really good at falling. He knows how to fall and not get hurt. He also knows he gets so good at falling and so good at the failure of that thing he's trying to do that he can start recognizing earlier on in the process when it's starting to go south.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he can make a micro adjustment earlier on to either decide, shit, it's good, not this time, let's try again. And so then he just circle back instead of taking the fall. And so like, I would rather be able to do that than like, start having enough experience of failure to recognize failure early enough out to be able to write the course. And that keeps the failure small instead of, we're going to fucking make this work, and then riding the handlebars into the earth and blowing it all up. Like that's what I've got to avoid.
Yeah, white knuckling it to death is not the best. Is not
like,
the best.
That's
answer.
the being the martyr, right? Like that's the martyr for the thing. Like, I'll show you,
pool.
And meanwhile, everyone else just walks away, and you're in the hospital. Like,
right.
So like learn the failure earlier. And hell, if you can avoid the failure, even cooler, because you can see the traps ahead of you and which ways to make left and right turns of like, yo, that ain't gonna work. I've played this game before, and I can tell you where the shortcomings come in. It's the same reason anyone who reaches out to me about information regarding running an apparel company or anything like that. Like, I can give you some pointers of where I ran into traps. These may not be the traps that you have, but these are what I've learned.
Yeah, I think the average child falls 8,000 times before they learn to walk, something like that. So like, if that
then
doesn't
at some point we decide falling's not okay anymore.
Right. At some point you're just like, I can't fall anymore. Like, and again,
we're built to fucking fall from early on. Like, we get bad at it.
Right. We and again, it's the cultural thing, right? We go to school and it's good, bad, pass, fail. We're not given that ebb and flow of life, that yin and yang, that water mindset. We're given this very rigid, this is the line of demarcation where it's successful. This is the line where it's failure. And if we approach as we get older, the more we stay in that mindset, the harder it is to break those neurological pathways. Where, like, again, having a child or having children, I get to see their ebb and flow of life for me, and it's a very reflective thing. And when you can go back to those alpha brainwave states of being, conscious but fluid and creative, and you could step into that space, well, then you're in control of the game now.
Yeah, I agree, man. I fully agree with you. It's yeah, you've got to be willing. You've got to be willing to do it. You've got to be willing to listen. You've got to be willing to, for me, that's that, like, listening to the universe. Like, and it seems the more perceptive I can get to listening to that vibe and that kind of direction that it wants to give me, and also staying grateful enough for what is going on at all points, that I get to try to make these decisions, that I get to try this failure because things are going well. Like, those have been big shifts in gratitude that change a lot of stuff. There's so much out there, and there's so much, mental roadblocks that people have put up because it's supposed to be the right way or the wrong way, or the pass fail, or this is what success equals and this is what it doesn't equal. Meanwhile, happiness is its own thing. And, very few people get to find all of it. Because it's really hard to find externally.
Yeah, it goes back to the bandwidth expansion, right? Like freeing up the bandwidth, creating the life or the feeling that you want to create in your life, and leaning into that as much as possible, and knowing when that wave is riding, right? And ride that wave for as long and as hard as you can, because it's going to crash. And now how quickly do you rebound from that? How quickly do you learn from that failure, and shifting the perspective of failure, shifting the perspective of saying, okay, this is failure. We're going to call this failure, for lack of a better term. This is the word that we've put to it. This is failure. But there's, like we said earlier, there's so much to learn in that failure. Everything is in that failure. And if you could reframe the idea of failing, right, and change the word, it changes the mindset, and then it changes how you handle the failure.
So sometimes you've got to just, for me, like, I don't always know the path forward. So sometimes the path forward for me is simply trying to figure out which paths don't work. And maybe I need the elimination style way to figure out which is the best option.
Do you not know the path forward, or do you not feel like, I feel like you not feel the path forward? Because there's an energetic thing that I think we all intrinsically know our own bullshit. I think we all have the answers to our own problems, and it's just a matter of how deep.
Oh, these are,
you want to go.
These aren't like a me problem. This would be like a mechanical problem of like business. That, like, I think this will drive business, right? And so you try it, and then you go, well, that doesn't fucking work. And then you got to try another. You know, and so I don't always know like what the next thing is that's going to be the next bit of rocket fuel for growth.
Sure.
So we got to keep trying shit. But when something works, let's A, do more of it, and B, why did it work? Because then if we can mine that, we can find some other stuff to like, okay, did it work because of this? Let's try to repeat that. You know, was it in the marketing? Was it in the item? Was it in this? Was it in the way that we promoted it? Was it in the story behind it? Is it any of these different avenues, or is it all?
Right. Is that something you got like a lot from training? Is that something you got like a lot from being in that high level of, you know, whether it be the Highland Games or whatever it is? Is that something that you kind of attained from that?
I think the Highland Games leads to it a lot, just because you take so many repetitions of throwing. And then it is such a lightweight thing that, I mean, there's plenty of throws that, yeah, I know on the entry that I made a mistake, that this is not going to be a big throw.
Right.
You know, way before anything starts happening. I don't need you to measure it. I know it's not good.
Right. It's kind of like, it's like taking it from the Highland Games into intermittent softball. It's like when you don't connect on one, you kind of, you know it, right? Like you know when the ball leaves your fingers, like, I'm not making that one in. You kind of feel it, as like you said, you know.
Right. And so like that feeling it is good, but you know, sometimes, and that's the way throwing works for me. Like you're trying to get really consistent on a movement, and you can feel the even smaller and small. The better you get at it, the smaller the movement, you realize that wasn't right.
Right.
Because you're trying to get, like, it's exponentially trying to get, I guess improving technique is exponentially harder. You know, there's some big picture stuff of like, if I see someone throwing from across the parking lot, I can go, oh shit, they're throwing shot put. But when I get really close, I can see the vast differences in like throwing form between Ryan Krauser, Adam Nelson, Reese Hoffa, Nick Ponzio, any of these guys. I can see the big differences when I get close. And like the four of those guys throw really different, and each person's different wouldn't work for the other one because they're playing to their own strengths. Like Ryan Krauser's 6'7". He gets to do some different stuff than Nick Ponzio does at 6 foot.
Yeah, the attention to detail.
And it's your stuff. It's which one works better for you and your body type and your bone length and your strengths and your weaknesses. Like, are you a speed thrower? Or are you a strength thrower? Like and all that applies to your thing, instead of just saying that there's one way to be a good thrower.
Yeah. And to go back to Atomic Habits, he discusses when he was playing baseball, he has his coach says, what separates the elite? You know, what separates a high level baseball player? And outside of the traditional answers are just like, oh, commitment and this and that. His coach was the elite don't get tired in the mundane of the reps. The reps, you could do the reps until you're done doing the reps. It's not like, oh, I got to change it up now and switch up, because they know it's what's working. And stepping into that space, knowing what's working, having the knowing and the wherewithal within yourself to say, this is what's working for me. I need to do more of that to be successful with this thing.
Everything's repetition. Everything's repetition. I remember listening to Jason Ellis talk about that when he was talking about, getting better at skateboarding. And he was like, after he had done that, he was like, okay, so if I want to get good at a thing, I just have to give a shit about it for 10 years. And then as that pivoted into him doing radio, I just remember him saying that the whole time. He's like, I'm going to be good at this. It's just going to take 10 years. I can be the best in the world at this. It's just going to take 10 years. And, it applies. And like that ability to walk into your second thing to try to be good at, because I've already got one. I'm not going to become best in the world, chances are, at a second sport. But that doesn't mean I can't be really good at something else. It doesn't mean I also can't provide more of an impact via my podcast. Maybe that really cool thing I did can be the equivalent to The Rock doing wrestling at this point. Like, what a fucking small chapter in what that dude's book is now. Meanwhile, a very similar career in wrestling with Stone Cold Steve Austin. That wrestling bit's a much bigger chapter in his book.
Right. I have a signed Stone Cold Steve Austin picture. I'm staring at it right here.
I have a signed Stone Cold Steve Austin action figure he gave me.
He's clotheslining mankind.
Dude, he's incredible. And I'm not taking anything away from what that guy has accomplished, because he has.
It's just not outside of wrestling. It's not with The Rock. I mean, there's no denying that The Rock is one of the biggest personalities
names on earth.
Right. Whereas Stone Cold Steve Austin, in the micro of wrestling, he is gigantic. But if you, if you magnify that and come outside looking in, people might go, who's Stone Cold Steve Austin? Like, there's a potential for that.
Right. But that doesn't take anything away from Stone Cold's career. The only thing that it's saying is that just because he did this one thing, like The Rock did in a very similar career, that doesn't have to be your thing. Right. There can always be a second thing that you're better at. And so removing that limitation from your own mind of, I already found the thing I was good at, and then just sitting on your hands the rest of your life just seems like a real fucking waste.
Right. And Stone Cold has created, his own thing, doing the podcast, had a couple TV shows.
He's killing it, right?
Right, exactly. But he could have gone a different path with them, like, oh, my wrestling career's over, and now what?
But all of Stone Cold's universe still revolves around him being Stone Cold Steve Austin, the wrestler. The Rock's doesn't.
Well, he still goes by The Rock, though.
Kind of. Other than that.
Other than his name.
Other than that. But he's not still raising the eyebrow and doing jabroni and still playing a character, whereas, Steve's still running a gimmick.
Right.
Now, I believe that gimmick is pretty close to real.
Right. The gimmick has been diluted to who he is.
For sure. And he's one of the raddest dudes of all time.
Yeah. I was a huge Stone Cold Steve Austin fan.
I had him on the podcast.
Did you?
Yeah. I went to his fucking house in LA.
How was that?
Sat down with it. It was awesome. It was one of the coolest experiences of my entire life.
Is that one of those surreal experiences where you're like, I'm in that space right now? Like,
fuck yeah.
You feel like you're on the Truman Show. Like, you're waiting for, and dude, see that great job. Okay, we're gonna bring in Stone Cold now.
I just went to his house, knocked on the door, went inside, and then we had a beer and then had a podcast. Like, the two of us were the only dudes in the room. And it's super, super surreal because, like, I was a guest on his, and then he was a guest on mine. And, like, I've kept the voicemail on my phone from him calling me later that day and about wanting to do my podcast with me. And
that would be my ringtone.
Dude, he's such a cool guy and, like, such a unique story and all this stuff. And so it was super surreal. Like, 13-year-old you walks into that room, and that's fucking Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like, They may as well have Breaking Glass music when you walk into the room. And like getting nerded out by it is super fun, but it's also a skill to like not getting too nerded out by it.
Right. Right. You want to use that energy in the positive, right? You want to use that like angst and anxiety and like nerd out, geeked out, like, holy shit, can you stun me real quick? Throw me a beer.
The trick to all the networking and friends I've made is it's none of the people are hard to meet.
Right.
The trick's being someone they'd talk to a second time.
Right.
Like that's where it becomes like building relationships.
Right. And not geeking out over it, just like recognizing that they're. I mean, it's Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like as you know, as I say that, right? Like it's like yeah, all right,
right.
Yeah, but like standing on the course truck, hosing down everybody. Yes, he did that, but he also takes a shit.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing with Barack Obama or anyone else. Barack Obama or Trump or any of that. Like, make no mistake, at some point during their tenure as president, they had dodgy guts one day. Like there was definitely a day that those guys probably missed a meeting because they couldn't stop shitting. And like that humanizes them for me a bit.
Right. Well, the idea of diarrhea humanizes everybody, right? If you want
the idea of like being in your jacket because like you have an interview to do like at the Oval Office desk, but meanwhile you're in sweatpants because you can't stop shitting. And like dress pants are too much of a hassle. I love the idea that like our president has to be a person and do that.
He still has like the points of the white shirt are just dangling in between his legs as he's taking.
Yeah, or that just like I imagine talking to your significant other and being like, look, I'm really happy that we're over in whatever country this is and we got to eat whatever, but I'm really in trouble today.
I have the bubble guts.
Oh, it's just going bad, man.
Right. It humanizes people. It's like it's no different.
Bubble guts on Air Force One, like that's a rough day. You're still not pumped on it.
No, it's not a bad place to be. There's worse places to be with bubble guts.
Worse places to be to get bubble guts for sure.
But it's definitely not ideal. Like you want to be in your own house, just free to go.
Yeah. Not surrounded by a bunch of security people.
Right. Just waiting for you. Matt, I appreciate your time, man.
Dude, thank you so much again for having me, Vinny.
Absolute pleasure. Where can people connect with you? Where can people get everything you're throwing out there?
I am the So podcast. You can check that out. It's everywhere that podcasts do their things. I hate Matt Vincent on Instagram. I am Matt Vincent, I think, on YouTube. And then I have Habit Coffee and Hate Brand Goods. So check all those out. We got a really cool drop coming Thursday.
Are those sweet shorts that I messaged you about? When are those
coming? Not yet. Those will come out in a few weeks.
All right.
Yeah, those are going to be sweet. Some new tobacco brown goat shorts. And then this week we're dropping the synth line of stuff that we came up with. So sweet. I've been heavily inspired by the movie Atomic Blonde for a while. Like such a silly movie, but like the color palette on it is so much fun and the art direction and like the universe they created in that film is beautiful.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's so much fun for a fucking ridiculous action movie that like Charlize Theron's a 80s Cold War spy in Berlin, like tons of fun. McAvoy kills it. It's a very entertaining film.
All right, good. I'll dive into it. Am
visually pleasing? Yeah, visually pleasing. Great action sequences. Killer soundtrack.
You really can't ask for more
lighting.
Than
that. Tons of great lighting.
You can't ask for more than that. Matt, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it, brother.
Thank you, dude. Thanks so much. Appreciate the chat.
Pleasure.
Later, man. Have a good one.
You too, bro.